Naked was our second collaboration. We made Life is Sweet before it, and I mean, it's not a question of coming up with a concept. I mean, Naked is one of a number of films, nearly all the films I've made and a number of films we've made together, and Dick and I have worked together. I mean, I've worked with no other cinematographer since Life is Sweet in 1990, and most of my films, the only exceptions being the three historical films which we collaborated on, Topsy Turvy, Mr. Turner and Peterloo, where we could say this is what it's about. Most of my films, there's no discussion about what it's about, because I go into a long period of development with the actors, and what it is gradually emerges up to a point, and somewhere during that, now this is where our collaboration starts to be something we can talk about. During the course of that, it's obviously important and necessary that I share with Dick, and incidentally the designer and the costume designer, but particularly with Dick, the sort of thing that's going on, that's evolving and that I think it's going to be, so that Dick can start to think about it and prepare and shoot tests and so on and so forth. And so during the course of the development of the characters and the relationships for Naked, at this particular point, I was able to say to Dick, as you will remember,
I remember it well.
It's kind of
yeah.
It's kind of nocturnal. It's a solo journey. There's something a bit bleak about it. There's something maybe. I mean, obviously we knew we were going to shoot.
It's like
in colour.
somewhat Dickensian as well. I think you said Dickensian.
Did I? Yeah.
Underbelly of London, nocturnal, a journey.
And I think I also
and with quite a lot of sex.
Sex, yeah. But something. Obviously, we knew we were going to shoot in colour, of course. But I think I sort of said maybe it's in some way monochromatic.
Yeah.
And that led you to the tests that you shot, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. It led me to investigate the idea of giving it quite an extreme look, which then took me to. Especially to 1984, which Roger Deakins shot in 1984, on which I worked, on which I was second unit. So I was able to see this process, bleach bypass, at first hand on that film. And also there was a couple of other films at the time that Terence Davis's Long Day Closes and Distant Voices Still Lives, both of which had that process on, photographed by Michael Coulter. And I got this bee in my bonnet that it would be a really quite an extreme. I mean, when I look back on the film now, it is very punkish. The film is very punk. It has this real punk element, and bleach bypass is a process where you skip a certain stage of the processing, and you end up with something that's quite grainy, quite contrasty, and very, very desaturated. So we shot tests with the designer, Alison Chitty, and we shot tests around the West End of London, because we knew it was going to be a journey at night, and we did that sort of thing, and then we interiors as well, and we took them to Mike, and we did the bleach bypass and showed Mike, and there were certain colours which didn't resolve correctly, like reds are a real issue. But the idea of it, the vibe of it, really, Mike absolutely loved it. Mike adored it.
It was great.
As soon as he saw it, he said, "This is absolutely fantastic. This is the sort of this is what we want to do."
When that happens, and this has happened on a number of our films, at that stage, when that comes back to me, I've continued working with the actors and on the story, really, and what it's about and the themes and the spirit of the thing. Of course, once I then see that then informs further decisions that I make dramatically, you know. And of course,
it helps inspire you, really.
Absolutely,
doesn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as with all these films, we don't. I mean, the myth is that there are two myths about my films, and this one not least. One is that in the so-called rehearsal period before the shoot, we completely developed a whole script, which we then just film in a conventional way. That's not true. We prepare the premise of the thing, but we actually develop each scene, sequence by sequence, on location by location, during the course of the shoot. We build the film up and discover the film as we go along shooting it. The other myth, of course, is that, which is another separate issue, is that the actors are improvising on screen, which is absolute rubbish, basically, because it's very, very precise.
There is none.
No. And
very rarely.
Just a word about the designer, Alison Chitty, who only made 3 films with us, of which this was the middle one. And she is, in fact, she's a theatre designer, and most of the time since then, and now exclusively, she's an opera designer. One interesting detail, just in the context of Alison Chitty, is that what we'd got on the go when Johnny meets Brian, the security guard, is that it was a regular office block in use, with lots of desks and things. And it was she who came and she said, "Look, I found this empty office, but I've got a really good idea. What about if it's empty and there's nothing there?" And I said, wow, because that was really a major contribution thematically to the film. So, that's really an illustration of the way we collaborate on making these films,
And the fact that it was, because there's so many windows in it, and the windows are approached all the time. The scene at the beginning of beginning of the scene, Johnny's sitting outside at night, and then it goes in, and Brian's closing, and then at the end they go up and see what's through the round window. We had to do it at night, so the whole that whole scene, extended scene, is all at night. Not only
did we shoot it at night, but of course we needed a substantial chunk of days to script it, to develop it. And we did that. We went into nighttime mode for that, because I said there's no way we can get it. We'll be able to find that material unless we're rehearsing at nighttime.
That's right.
So, in fact, the famous scene when they come into the thing and Johnny is silhouetted from behind, and there was the very long harangue. That only came about because we were. This is in the rehearsals. I was watching an improvisation at night, in the middle of the night, and literally the lights were off, and they came in and turned the lights on, but the lights were on behind, but not in front. So that presented itself, and again, that's an illustration of the organic way that we make these films, and how you really get inspiration from exploring, really.
But everything was real in it. What you saw through that round window of her across the road dancing, up on the second, third floor, wherever she was, that was all absolutely. We did that. We didn't cheat on it. That was the view out of that round window.
Across the road,
was across the road, Charlotte Street. The reverse, when Johnny's in her room, up there, and you can see the round window quite clearly across the road through her window, and you can see Brian stood there, as Johnny says, perhaps having a little wank, But that's real. That room was the room we went over to and shot back at the building. So there's no cheating. It's location.
I mean, a very good illustration of the fusion between concept and filming and the drama is the very end of the film. I mean, we'd shot nearly the whole film, and we were developing the action when Sandra comes back right at the end.
Yeah.
And David Thewlis and I, we were really had a long debate on the go. We couldn't resolve what should actually happen. And of course, it wasn't going to be merely a question of what happens, but what it thematically, how it would resolve the nature of what the film is. And does he stay? Does he go back to Manchester with his girlfriend? What? And I used to drive to the location from North London, and locations in Dalston, and I would drive down this long road and looking at the house, this neo-Gothic pile, which is where the flat.
Psycho
house, yeah. And I didn't take any notice of it, and listened to the radio. And one day, I was looking at it by no means for the first time, and I suddenly thought, I can see the end of the film. And I pulled off. And so I said to Dick, you know, we resolved it with David, you know, and that he actually takes the money and he staggers off down the street, and that's it. And of course I shared that with Dick, and of course there was no way it could be a conventional tracking shot on rails, because we're going to go right down the street.
Yeah.
So
that was on film. We couldn't hide the rails, and also we started right on the bottom of the stairs that led up to the front door. So we were right in there as he came down, and so we had it either was going to have to be on my shoulder or something a bit smoother, and we went with Steadicam in the end and did it on Steadicam. It's one of the few times we've ever used it.
Very seldom. The first time that was.
Yeah.
And then one of the subsequent times was on Vera Drake, when we got a distinguished Steadicam man out to the prison in Oxford, where we were shooting the last scene of the film, and by about 10:30 we sent him home because we realised we had no use for a Steadicam. Yeah. But this end of Naked absolutely needed it, and you know, that end, once we'd got that end, it seemed inevitable.
Yeah, I know.
Freeze,
it looks
frame,
absolutely written in, doesn't it?
And then what happens? Yeah. And when we took the film to the New York Film Festival, subsequently, which is always a very good festival because the audiences are very intelligent at the Q&As. The first question after the screening of Naked was, a guy said, "Mr. Leigh," he said, "what happens by an hour after the end of the film? Is Johnny dead?" I said, "I don't know. That's for you to decide, you know." But there you go. Because I saw the cinematic language of it, of him tracking with him down the street, that unlocked what should actually happen dramatically, narratively. The most important thing to say about the sexual aspect and the male behaviour aspect of the film is that, first of all, when the film came out and when it had some of the criticism it had, particularly from a kind of extreme feminist position when it first came out, which had disappeared by the time it was being screened at the end of the 90s, incidentally. In the first place, some critics and some women said Johnny's a misogynist. Johnny is a cynic. He's not a cynic. He's an idealist, a frustrated idealist. And he talks a great deal about that. And he's not a misogynist, but he has he has an unfulfilled and unbalanced sexual disposition. But the important thing is, and I deliberately did this, that the landlord is there dramatically and thematically to offset Johnny, because he really is a misogynist. He really is a fascist and, you know, a serious
abuser,
maltreater of women. And it's important that perspective is there. As to the execution of the various sexual scenes in the film, the important thing is that, I mean, you know, some people have said, well, presumably you had to coerce the actresses into doing it. I did not, because all the actresses who were in the film, including the late Katrin Cartlidge, who died some years later very suddenly, very sadly, were all highly intelligent, highly talented character actors who didn't just play themselves as actors in my films don't, and all feminists. And there was absolutely no issue with what we were doing. They knew what we were doing, what it was about, what that behaviour is about, what that male behaviour is about, what that female behaviour is about, and we just got on with it, basically. So there was no kind of coercion, and indeed there wouldn't be, because I wouldn't do that anyway, basically.
Yeah, no embarrassment whatsoever in any regard in when we were shooting it. No.
I mean, it is important that when we were shooting, we had a mixed crew. You know, back in the day, in the period before we would ever have made this film, you would have had the only females anyway near the shoot would be the continuity person, the script supervisor, as we now call them, or the makeup people, the costume people. In fact, we had, apart from a woman designer, a woman art director. We had a woman boom swinger, a woman focus puller. You know, I mean, it was a, you know, people will carp and whinge about all sorts of things. You know, I mean, if you take Happy Go Lucky, which is a film I always regard as being a sort of a matching partner to Naked, because Poppy, the central character of that film, is also an idealist, and the difference between her and Johnny is that she deals with it and is positive. But you know, that's a film about a woman who is completely focused, completely responsible, really has you know, takes life seriously, but has a great sense of humour and is a bundle of fun as well. And some people latched onto what she's like in the very first couple of scenes when you first see her, and then go through the entire journey of the film, and at the end say, I couldn't stand that woman, I couldn't and the thing is, they didn't go on the journey with her. And if you go on the journey with Johnny in Naked, you see all sorts of sides of him. You know, he's not a black and white character, and indeed what the film isn't. I mean, I defy anybody to really talk in simple terms about what the film is about, and I certainly wouldn't wish to try and do that, because it's very, very complex. And so it's reductionist to talk about it in terms of the influence of earlier plays or of the reaction of Julia Burchill or any of those things, because those are the people that the critics in question simply didn't get it, basically, and weren't interested in getting it.
When I've been recently restoring the film, bringing it back to exactly how hopefully it was back then, which is what I've been doing. There's been no other version that is worth its salt. This is the really only version worth having a look at. I feel immensely proud of what we achieved on the film, because it's as punk and extreme, and it's dynamic, and the camera's constantly moving. There is a huge amount of handheld in it. I mean, technically, it's like really exciting and edgy, very edgy. And the way we film scenes with hidden cameras and just observational in some places, like when Katrin, Sophie, and Johnny are walking and dancing almost, her around him down the high street, and when he stood outside Leicester Square tube station, we were in the middle. We had a bit of a hidden camera with a thing around it to hide it in the middle of the island there. There's so many wonderful things that we did. I mean, it's very guerrilla filmmaking.
The scene outside, the scene when he first meets Archie and Maggie, which is outside a famous Italian delicatessen called Lena's Stores in Soho in London. We rehearsed that scene very precisely, but we shot it all nighttime, with a camera around, but with real people walking. There was no crowd control, there were no extras. The traffic was the real traffic, but it was a structured scene. And of course, you know, somebody asked me the other day, well, didn't people stop and ask you what you were doing? Of course, in Soho, in the middle of the night, we used to all kinds of nonsense going on.
Yeah, there weren't that many people around. I mean, sex workers and stuff, but very few.
I mean, the only
it wasn't like it is now, rammed. You know, it was like quite quiet.
The only objection we had from anybody was a brothel down the alleyway.
That's
and they complained that we were stopping clients from going. Yeah.
But there's something else about it. I mean, in terms of guerrilla filmmaking, the whole film is rather like that. I mean, we didn't have big lights outside the office block. We went with what was available. We didn't have big lights in any of the stuff we did in the West End. Somebody would actually now and again stick their head out, and I would say to my guys, let's ask him if we can put a light up there he's looking down. Do you mind if we come up and stick a light in your flat? And invariably it was, yeah, fine, come up. And we'd take a small lamp up there, and we did a lot of that guerrilla type of filmmaking with just a very, very small unit, very small equipment, and that's the way we went. And yeah, I mean, it was just very exciting to do.
I mean, for me, if you ask, what do I feel about it now? again, like Dick, I mean, you know, I'm very proud of it. I mean, it's apart from, I mean, we've talked about the filming of it, but it is a gallery of incredibly good performances
Yeah.
by brilliant character actors. And I say character actors because, you know, I emphasise that these are not people playing themselves, you know. And, you know, and of course, to repeat very specifically, one of the great performances in the film is Katrin Cartlidge, whose death a few years later was one of the great tragedies. And incidentally, had she lived, she would now be a successful film director, because that's where she was heading. But that intelligence, plus the real ability to do character acting and to be truthful, was what she did, and indeed everybody did. And I'm immensely proud of it. And apart from anything else, you know, up to then, most of what I'd done was, in a more obvious way, domestic. I mean, it still had, you know, there was a hardness and a bleakness and all that, but you know, this was a departure.
It really got you out there.
Yeah. I mean, we got out in the streets.
Yeah, we really went out there.
Yeah.
We really did. And you know, the bleach bypass, the whole look of it, it just really lends itself to it. You know, do you know there's everywhere you walk in London, there's a rat within. I mean, it just looks. It's got this really strong feeling about it.
If you try and find the location, where the famous image of Johnny in that space with Archie and Maggie running around, if you try and find that location, you will have a tough time, because that was, in fact, a Shoreditch railway station which had closed in 1937, and it was a piece of railway wasteland. It is now, on that site, are posh flats at Brick Lane. So you will never
behind it.
You will never find that location. Yeah. In fact, you know.
And the scene where he goes over with her, the Scottish girl, and she says, "Have you ever seen a dead body?" All right, Maggie, of course. And there's the old lady coming up with the bag. And that was just where that other location was. They were all. It was a London that is no longer in existence.
Been trendified out of existence.
It'd be like the promos that I used to do at the time, like Specials Ghost Town, and it just doesn't exist anymore. That was the last of it, really, what we did, and it was all swept away.
Another interesting fact about our West End shoots is that on 2 occasions, something very particular happened. One when we were shooting outside Leicester Square Station, and the other when we were in Brewer Street in the middle of the night. Yeah. Our film unit base, where the food and the costumes and everything else was on the other side of the West End, up by Tottenham Court Road. And on both occasions, there were IRA bomb threats. And whenever that happened, what the Metropolitan Police would do was to cut the West End in half down Oxford Street. And you couldn't cross. No way could you get across. And so on both occasions, we were cut off from our unit base. And that is a further, you carry on filming despite, I mean, we were very used to bomb the IRA campaign at that time, because it was, it was a common part of London existence. Andrew Dixon is a brilliant composer. He, like all the composers I've worked with, I mean, he can only start work when he sees a cut of the film. And, he reacts emotionally to it. And, it was very inspired and very unpredictable to have the idea of a harp being, a lead instrument. And we went and spent a whole day with a famous harpist, Skylar Kanga, who plays the harp on the track, in her house full of harps, to find the right harp, and it's an amazing score, really. And the great thing about his score, and the kind of score I like for a movie, is that you have it when it really earns its keep, and when you don't want to score, it shuts up.
Yeah.
And that gives it its strength when it's actually happening.
When the titles come on, after after the alleyway
Yeah.
with the woman. He runs off. There's an extraordinary sort of drum thing, like this
Drum beat.
big drum beat, and then he steals the car. And then we're on the road, on the motorway, and it comes in there, and it's got all the titles run through there. The score there, it just makes, every time I see the film, it makes the hairs on the back of my stand up. It's so resonant.
It has the courage, that
Yeah.
piece of that cue, to repeat the same phrase over and over again, and only occasionally does it shift in its underscore. You know, so it's incredibly
it's very bold.
courageous. And,